You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
All righty, moving forward, New York's Attorney General announced Tuesday that a grand jury has declined to indict the officers responsible for Daniel Prude's death. Now, on March 23, 2020, Rochester officers were responding to a call of a man acting erratically when they encountered Prude. Prude was having a mental breakdown and was walking through the streets naked. When officers approached him, officers then detained him and placed a mesh bag over his head in order to stop him from spitting. An officer then pushed Prude's face against the ground, and another officer pushed his knee into Prude's back. These two officers held Prude down for 2 minutes. As a result, Prude fell unconscious and needed to be on life support. He died a week later. Attorney General Letitia James, who took over the investigation into Prude's death, says she and her team were not able to persuade the grand jury that the officers involved committed a crime. Joining me now to continue this discussion is Daniel Prude family's attorney, Elliot Doby Shields. Elliot, thank you so much for joining me today. I wish you were joining me for something better, under better circumstances. But many people, including the Rochester community, are wondering how there wasn't enough evidence to prove that these officers used excessive force against Daniel Prude and should thus be held accountable.
There are a lot of things that we can look to understand what happened. However, now Attorney General Letitia James came out yesterday and said she was very disappointed with the grand jury's decision not to indict the RPD officers. However, if you take a close look at the subject matter experts that she presented to the grand jury, it's no wonder why they didn't secure an indictment. Her office hired Gary Vilke, and he's a well-known police defense expert. In cases in federal court where attorneys like me who bring civil rights cases against officers that kill unarmed people, Gary Vilke is one of the go-to experts to explain, to defend police officers when they kill someone. And he came in, and instead of testifying on behalf of Tish James's office, that consistent with the medical examiner's report that determined his death was caused by positional asphyxia, Gary Vilke came in and said, no, his death was actually a result of excited delirium. Now, excited delirium is not a medical term. It's a made-up term. It's not a real medical condition. It's a made-up term that's only been around for about 10 years. Basically, it's used as a wastebasket as law enforcement, meaning that everybody that creates any problems or struggles with the police and that ends up hurt or dead is thrown into this wastebasket. So, it's very disappointing. Honestly, after reading the report that she released, it doesn't seem like her office actually tried to secure an indictment in this case. And honestly, I'm outraged at what her report says.
Well, Elliot, with what you're saying, though, if they use this guy who has a history of defending police, do you believe that this was just a setup for them to lose the case, essentially?
That is essentially what I believe after reading her report. Now, to the Attorney General's credit, she did get the judge in the Daniel Prude case to agree to unseal the grand jury minutes. So soon, I guess, we'll get a better sense of exactly what evidence they presented to the grand jury. But based on the public report that they released, it honestly does not seem like her office even attempted to secure an indictment against these officers.
Elliot, this isn't...
And you know what that...
Go ahead, I'll let you finish your statement. Go ahead, Elliot.
You know, what I was going to say is this shows that what we need is a change in the system. What we need is to get a truly independent prosecutor in cases where police kill unarmed citizens, because over and over again, this is the result that we get. And while the Attorney General is independent of local law enforcement, she's still the top law enforcement official in the state of New York. What we need is a truly independent person to be appointed in these cases, somebody that has no connection to the government at all, like an independent attorney or somebody from a different state. Because if this is the system that was supposed to be set up to fix what happened after the Staten Island District Attorney failed to secure an indictment of Daniel Pantaleo following the death of Eric Garner, it's obviously still not working.
And Elliot, like you're saying, we see this time and time again, right, where officers are caught on tape using excessive force, killing victims who aren't armed, like in the case of Daniel Prude here. And you're basically saying that if they were to use independent prosecutors, maybe the outcome would be different. And obviously, Elliot, you are not the first person to think this, but in your opinion, why do you think that's not something that's being pursued?
You know, honestly, what happened was there was a push following what happened, the failure to secure an indictment of Daniel Pantaleo, for a truly independent prosecutor. And Governor Cuomo, to his credit, tried to jump in and make this process occur more quickly by passing an executive order. Executive Order 147 in New York. You know, at the time, there was a split in the state legislature, and we would not have been able to get a law passed to appoint an independent prosecutor. And so Governor Cuomo did the next best thing, passed this executive order, which was signed into law last summer, along with a series of other reform efforts in New York. But if you can't secure an indictment in this case, then it's obviously not working. And now is the time to push for these reforms. As we see this happening over and over again around the country, as there's more and more body camera video showing unarmed black people killed by law enforcement officers, now is the time to push for this change.
Elliot, I want to know from you, how is the family responding to the grand jury's decision?
They're heartbroken. They're devastated. It's hard for them to understand all this anger that I'm feeling and I'm trying to express on their behalf is because I've spent hours on the phone with them over the last couple of days. You know, Joe Prude is absolutely torn up. He's just been crying. He can't sleep. He can't understand why he met with Letitia James and she told him, look, there was nothing we could do. It was excited delirium. That's unacceptable to the family. That's unacceptable to me. And that should be unacceptable to everyone in the Rochester community and around the country, because it's a made-up junk science term that has no basis in fact. It's got no basis in any peer-reviewed medical literature, and it's literally just an excuse used by law enforcement when they kill unarmed people. So we need to debunk this unscientific excuse once and for all.
Is the family planning to take next steps in order to see justice?
Well, so there is a lawsuit seeking damages in federal court that was already filed. The attorneys for some of the children are spearheading that effort at this moment. And there's additional litigation that's moving forwards in state court related to some records requests that we did that where we requested the original video of the incident along with communications so that we can really understand the cover-up that happened from the city's perspective, because it took months and months. We first requested the video and all of the paperwork related to the incident on April 3rd, just days after Daniel Prude died. And the city just ignored our open records request. They ignored it for months. And then when they did finally fulfill our request, they certified that they had no communications related to what happened to Mr. Prude. Come to find out, after we released the video, they've got hundreds and hundreds of pages of communications related to the cover-up, where internally within the Rochester Police Department, they're saying things like, it would be a misrepresentation to conflate this incident with what happened to other unarmed black people around the country, and it could lead to violent blowback in our community. And that's all that they were concerned about. They weren't concerned about transparency. All that they were concerned about was how it would look to the community and covering it up and not releasing the video so that they wouldn't face the protests that eventually occurred as a result of them covering up the incident. So it's absolutely outrageous. We're still moving forwards with that because they falsely certified that they didn't have any of these communications. And then they admitted after we released the video that, hey, actually, we have several hundred pages of these communications. So we're moving forwards with that. And then there were hundreds and hundreds of people that were injured at these protests. And my office personally represents over 100 people that were seriously injured by law enforcement. All of these people came out to try to seek justice for Daniel Prude, to tell the police what you did isn't right and the system needs to change. And how did the law enforcement in the Rochester community respond? They shot them in the face with pepper balls. They tear gassed people. They violently arrested them, threw them to the ground. They brought dogs out to these protests. They corralled people on bridges, told them to disperse when there was nowhere to go. And then they shot them. They threw them on the ground. And they beat them up. And that's how the police respond when people demand change. It's honestly hard to comprehend how, in this day and age, we're allowing this to happen. But we're not going to allow it to happen. We're going to hold them accountable in court.
And that's what you're doing, Elliot. You're trying to hold them accountable in court. And the people in Rochester started taking to the streets yesterday, demanding that the police still be held accountable despite the grand jury's decision. But we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Elliot. Greatly appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.